the Clippers, the other team in Los Angeles, they played a game today against the Mavericks. They lost. They came out a little slow, clawed back, and then just lost in the end. But are you guys concerned about their performance and how their maybe newly improved team looked against this Mavericks team that they beat last year, but they have Porzingis now, who's their second best player? So, Nolan, thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't think they should be too concerned just because of the vast difference in the shooting versus the Mavs and them in terms of percentages. Like, I don't really think there's going to be that much of a divide going forward. The one thing that I would say did kind of concern me is towards the end of the game, their offense towards the end. I think they settled for a lot of jumpers that Kawhi and PG can make jumpers. They have very good jump shots, but I think they can always do a little bit more to find a better shot. I don't think the defenders that they're going up against are anything super special. I think they can get down low and then either create a better shot than just a mid-range or a three-point jumper, or even draw a double and then feed one of the big men. So I would say in terms of the entire game, I don't think they should be too concerned, but I think they should have a little bit better of a game plan, in my opinion, about down the stretch offense. But what are your thoughts, Vish?
I don't think they should be that concerned. I think there were a lot of things that went wrong that I don't expect to go wrong throughout this series. Obviously, it's a really tough series because Luka Doncic is like James Harden or LeBron. He's one of those players who can carry an entire offense. And if he's got the ball in his hands, that offense is going to be very good because they'll get good shots because he's a great decision maker. And he's also a very, very good scorer. But I look at it and I felt like, the Clippers shot 75% from the free throw line. They're the best free throw shooting team in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard missed 2 free throws. He's a 90% free throw shooter. Those things are not going to happen unless they just have a terrible, terrible series. I don't expect those things to happen. The Clippers also are the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA. Dallas was 17 for 36 from 3. The Clippers shot 28%, 11 for 40, and Marcus Morris, who's a 50% 3-point shooter, was 0 for 6. Paul George is a 44% 3-point shooter, shot 2 for 8. So, I don't expect those type things to really, really be an issue for them. I would say the only cause for concern is the fact that I don't know if Serge Ibaka, if it's a health thing, but they can't start Zubac. One of my favorite things about the Clippers this year was that they brought in Serge Ibaka, and Serge Ibaka meant that they could actually switch everything. Zubac is still a bad defensive player. He's improved, but he's still a bad defensive player. And Luka Doncic basically had his barbecue chicken way with Zubac, so that would maybe be my only concern, but let me continue on why I'm not concerned. So I talked about the Clippers shooting itself. I also don't think Dallas is going to shoot that well. Luka Doncic made 5 threes. Luka Doncic is a career, 33% 3-point shooter. He shot 35 this year. He averages making 2 threes a game, but it takes him 8 attempts or 2.5, basically 3 threes a game on 8 attempts. So, I don't expect Luka Doncic to make 5 threes, especially contested ones, the way he was making them today. I don't expect Tim Hardaway and Dorian Finney-Smith to shoot the ball the way they did. The Mavericks are obviously going to be a very, very tough team because of Luka Doncic, but I don't expect the Clippers to have the type of problems that they had today, just because I felt like it was kind of an anomaly game where every shot, the Mavericks shot lights out and the Clippers didn't shoot the ball well. I do think your point is valid, Noel, but I'll let Blake elaborate on that a bit more about the late game offense, because I also felt it looked a little stagnant, and Kawhi Leonard at the top of the key when he's getting trapped or doubled is not the way you want to run your late game offense.
Yeah, that was good points. I thought the shooting was the main thing. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a really good shooter, but he was shooting unconscious. He was off the dribble, just pulling in Kawhi's face. And if he was hitting it consistently, but I highly doubt that he will be able to do that for a full series. Finney-Smith shot incredibly well also. He's a pretty good shooter, but again, these guys shooting over 50% is just that's unreal. In Luka, I thought towards the end of the game, I think we saw what will actually happen, and he hit 3 step backs in the first half, and he was pulling them in the second half, and they were not going in. I think he airballed 1 or 2 or just clanked them off the rim, not close. And that's more of his shooting. And his shooting is really – he takes some bad shots. And I know he obviously has a bunch of highlight 3 step backs where he just makes someone look bad, but obviously for every one of those, there's 4 other ones where it's just not close. So those shots concern me. And then the late game offense point that you guys both mentioned, I really like that. And I think having Rondo in there more could help with that because he is actually a very good playmaker. And for some whatever reason, no one can explain it, but playoff Rondo is real. It gets mentioned and people doubt him, but he was making threes out there like for no good reason. And I think he'll continue to do that. But the thing with their offense late game was, yeah, they'd have Paul George or Kawhi at the top of the key. There'd be a double. And then they'd have basically 2 passes, and then they're back to square one where it's like, okay, we have Kawhi and Paul at the top of the key, and it's like, all right, 10 seconds are off the clock. Like nothing got accomplished. So maybe that's more cutters. Maybe that's having people that are better at passing out there, like Rondo, who can facilitate more. But yeah, it is concerning when they can't really get an open look off of a double team from Kawhi and Paul. And then my last thing I wanted to talk about, which actually is concerning for me from the Clippers standpoint, is when Luka was getting doubled, like more close to the ends of the game, they were getting very clean looks. Like it would be a double and then it'd just be a strictly 4-on-3 and one of the guys who was doubling Luka couldn't get back. And for me, that's concerning in the fact that Porzingis was taking one-on-ones. He'd either have a clean dunk or he'd be one-on-one against like Nicholas Batum. And it's like, all right, he has to score this, and there was a lot of that for me, or open cutters getting quick dunks, whether that was Hardaway Jr. or Porzingis or Finney Smith. So that part did concern me for the Clippers in the sense that they weren't able to guard him one-on-one at all. And you'd think like, all right, Paul George, Batum, Kawhi, they're all really good defenders. You could throw Beverly in there. But still one-on-one, they were kind of getting cooked a little bit considering how well Luka did. So that was just my thought and my thing where the Clippers should actually be concerned.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that if you didn't touch on that. But yeah, I think it was interesting because we were kind of talking about the offense. But the thing that stuck out to me when I watched the end of the game was how many easy baskets the Mavs got down the stretch. And as much as like they could kind of create some havoc with Rondo playing like uptight and doubling Luka, but I just think that they're going to run into trouble time and time again if they double Luka at the top of the key because of how good a facilitator he is. Mm-hmm. Other guys you can do that too. Like as we mentioned earlier, Giannis. If you double Giannis top of the key, probably not going to find much. Maybe he'll make a pass, but probably not. But Luka Doncic, you really can't do that. And as much of a playmaker as he is, like you said, he wasn't shooting that well in the end of the game. So by them doubling him, I understand the move. But at that point, I might just put a good defender on him and just try to have him stay with him because even though he's such a good player, I'd rather have him take a contested shot than an open Porzingis dunk or Tim Hardaway to the layup. Mm-hmm. So I would totally agree with your take on that, Blake.
So I actually think that they adjusted right to trapping him because he was making shots. But I actually think the original defensive game plan was the right idea because the thing that makes Luka so special is his facilitating, right? Like to me, there's a difference between a good passer and a really good facilitator. Like a good passer, like Giannis or Russell Westbrook or those guys, they can make that one spectacular pass for an assist and all of that, and they're really good passers. But what makes Luka Doncic or a LeBron or a CP3 that sets them apart is when that double is coming, they know how to get rid of the ball, where to get rid of the ball, and when to create easy matchups and easy opportunities for their teammates. That's what Luka Doncic kept doing. He was like, okay, you're going to double me. Bang, I'm going to throw it out to Dorian Finney-Smith. Now it's 4-on-3, and he's going to toss it to Porzingis, and Kawhi's going to get posterized. And they kept making good basketball plays, but I think they had the right idea. Make him make shots again. The thing is that you just don't have Zubac in the game. Don't switch everything when you got Zubac in the game because Zubac is going to be barbecue chicken. But if somebody else switches onto Luka, I think it's the right idea. That step back 3, he's a phenomenal player. But, I mean, even he's the streakiest shooter I've ever seen. The first shot will be pure. The next shot will be an air ball or he'll hit the backboard or something like that. It's really, really weird. And you just make him make shots like that. And I think they have the right idea. I don't think they should be too worried because I think they should go in with the same game plan. And if he makes shots for 4 games in this series and beats you, well, then just go shake his hand. But I don't expect him to do that. And then the other positive thing was that Paul George had a really strong second half, which is really good to see for the Clippers because we know what happens to Paul George sometimes when he's having a poor game. It compounds to his entire game where his defense, he starts fouling and then complaining about calls. He starts charging. He goes out of control. He starts turning the ball over. He kept his cool. He kept his composure, got himself to the free throw line. He had a really strong second half. It's definitely something to build on. I do expect Paul George to shoot way better throughout this series. I think he will shoot well throughout this series. So I don't think overall there's a lot of concern for the Clippers, but there is obviously a little bit when you're playing against a guy in Luka Doncic who's a top 10, top 5 player in the league, and you're down 0-1.
Mm-hmm. Any more thoughts on all or Vish?
I would just say that the only other thing I can think of that could concern the Clips is that the Mavs got a chip on their shoulder. They lost this matchup last time. They're out for revenge. So in certain parts of the game, I could see them having more intensity and energy just as a team, as a collective, especially if, like, let's say Paul George has a bad game, Kawhi has a bad game, and the Clippers don't really know what to do. I can see that as being a factor of concern. That's the only thing I would say.
I have a question for you guys. Did you guys think the Clippers defended well? Because besides the end of the game when they started trapping, and this is like the last 2-3 minutes, and the Mavs got easy access, like free shots, I actually thought the Clippers played great defense. They were active. They rotated really well. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway were just making shots. And it wasn't like they were getting wide open looks. They were getting okay looks, which is a product of how special Luka Doncic is a passer. But it was like maybe a half a second of space, and they were drilling them. And if they drill them like that, I mean, there's nothing you can do when a team makes 17 threes on you. Like, you're not going to win if you only make 11. So, like, do you think their defense was really – because I think their defense was okay, and I think if they play the same exact defense and they make shots on Tuesday, they will win.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'll jump in there. Yeah, I would say that aside from the end of the game, no, I didn't have too many problems with their defense. I thought they had a good game plan, and I think what you were saying, Vish, once they switched the game plan to trap Luka more, that's when stuff got out of whack. I think they should just stayed home with their game plan the entire game and see where it got them.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. And honestly, like, if Luka hits a step back three, like, you will live with that because more times than not, he's not going to do that consistently. And Tim Hardaway is not going to take 2 dribbles and pull in Kawhi's face consistently. Those are just things that are, if they can do that consistently, you lose and you say, wow, they just played incredibly well. But yeah, like for me, when they started just doubling at the end of the game is when I was like, okay, they're scoring a lot of points, and it's not that like they're hitting contested shots. Like, it's a Tim Hardaway layup who's in the lane just cutting and no one's even there, or Porzingis is in the post against a smaller guy, and obviously, he's a really good player, and he didn't even play particularly well. I thought they played great defense on him, considering the height advantage he had, but they were forcing him into bad shots. But at the end of the game, when he was just hitting uncontested layups or shooting over a smaller guy consistently with no help, yeah, you're going to run into problems if that has to happen.
Yeah, and then I would say just one final cause for concern. I know this guy's had an excellent season, but again, as a Pistons fan, I know this guy's game. It's Reggie Jackson and the lack of just conscience and him just taking bad shots in a game where he's not shooting the ball well. I would actually like to see them give more minutes to Terrence Mann, because I actually think, now this is going to sound like a hot take, but I've watched a lot of Clippers basketball this year. I think Terrence Mann is the best defensive point guard on this team. He's a better defensive player than Patrick Beverley, who's a little overrated in my opinion, and he fouls way, way, way too much. I mean, Patrick Beverley, first quarter, I mean, how many times have you seen this story? Puts his hand up like this. He's taken 2 early fouls. He's out of the game by 8 minutes, and you're like 1 foul away from the bonus. Like, this is the story every time he plays, but he's hurt so much. I think Terrence Mann is the best defensive guard on this team. I would actually like to see him get more minutes, just because I also think he's shot the ball decent enough where he is a playable player in this year's playoffs. And I think he is someone that could actually maybe take some minutes on Luka Doncic, and give rest to Kawhi and Paul George and Rondo and Marcus Morris, and do a very, very serviceable job, because I think he's a really good player in that role.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen too much of Terrence Mann. I know Luke Kennard was in there, and he kind of fell out of the rotation, unfortunately. But one thing I'll say is the Clippers love their Detroit Pistons former Detroit Pistons players. I mean, you gotta love it. They just love the Pistons pipeline. But